But you told me not to fix it. Posted by Mad Cat Scientist. This is my favorite malicious compliance and petty revenge that I've ever had the joy of being part of. About 10 years ago now, I was working for a small data center in my town. I originally started there as a tech support operator and did call center work helping various small companies over the phone with basic computer issues. I wasn't over the moon about it, but I also didn't hate it. However, when one of our major clients backed out of their contract due to budget cuts on their end, my company scrambled into a reorganization and tried to keep as many employees as possible, hoping to win that client back. During that reorg, I got shifted over to physical security. I took over the role of 2 individuals while they did a lateral move. My new role had me running the daily ins and outs of the data center and its security while they were supposed to make improvements. Of course, I had never done this type of job before, but I took to it pretty quickly. It also didn't take me long to realize that one of the individuals that I replaced, Ted, wasn't quite up to snuff like he thought he was. Ted's biggest enemy was the cameras. He constantly struggled with them. He couldn't ever figure out why they weren't saving the footage the way that he thought they should be. He would bemoan about how he had a camera set up and working the way he wanted it to, only to have it stop saving the files properly a few weeks later. He also rarely let me help and take a look at the configurations of the cameras because I don't need to know how to adjust them, just how to watch them. One day though, he was struggling with a camera that a client was paying for. They wanted a camera on their servers to make sure that only their team worked on their servers. I always thought it was a bit of paranoia since each server rack had a lock and key and even security didn't have spares. But it made the client happy and the company was making money off of it, so whatever. Anyways, Ted was panicked because he couldn't get the cameras to save properly and he didn't know what to do. He eventually gave up and put a call into the camera manufacturer, Cisco, to try and get them to assist. In his frustration, he left the camera configuration open and I decided to take a crack at it. I mean, I have a technical background and camera systems aren't really all that different from any other program that I have to troubleshoot on the spot. So I wrote down all of the original configuration information and made sure I documented any changes I made. Eventually, I figured out why Ted couldn't grasp the camera issue. Ted never understood that all cameras saved their data to a single server and the server was full. And looking at just this camera configuration, I could tell why. He had the camera recording and saving all its footage for 24 hours a day in HD. Plus, he wanted this to keep 90 days worth of footage. In case you don't know much about camera or video footage, that's a lot of storage space that you'll need. That doesn't include all the other cameras that were probably also set to similar settings. But the software never errored out saying it wouldn't be able to save that much storage. It would just let you make all your changes and then at the bottom of the screen say something similar to estimated archiving max allowance, 2 days, meaning the server only had enough space to save 2 days worth of footage with that configuration. However, Ted must have never seen that or never knew what it meant. Realizing the issue, I proceeded to make the correct changes, setting the camera to record only on movement, turning it down off HD, and increasing the footage priority. That means it wouldn't be the first to be overwritten if the server ran out of space again. After making the changes, the dialog said something closer to estimated archiving max allowance, 100 days. I smiled and quickly called Ted up to let him know what the issue was and how I fixed it. However, instead of a grateful Ted, I got, "Hey Ted, I fixed the camera issue. See, what's going on is..."
"What camera issue?"
"Oh, that client camera that you struggled with earlier. I think you said that you couldn't get it to save for 90 days.
"What? Why did you touch that? You're making us breach the contract."
"But it's already broken. We're already breaching the contract."
"No, I have a ticket in with Cisco. They will fix the issue. Put it back immediately."
"Okay, but can I at least explain what I learned?"
"No, just put the camera back to the original setting I had it at. Let the experts figure it out."
"But I figured it out."
"Just put it back and stop changing the configs. If I learn you're the reason we're having camera problems, I'll make sure Linda knows about it."
And Linda was my boss's boss. Okay, fine. I sighed and hung up, putting the camera back to its broken configuration. Of course, Cisco never called back, and Ted forgot about the issue, and now he was plagued with even more camera problems because the rest of the cameras weren't saving their footage either. For the next 2 weeks, whenever Ted walked into the security office and had a problem with the camera, I would try to explain the issue, only to be huffed away and asked to go stand in front of that camera so I can see if it will pick up your motion. In his eyes, he essentially demoted from physical security lead to motion detection officer. Eventually, I gave up, and amongst other various issues that I had between him and management, I started to look for a new job. Now, it's my second to last day at work, and about 3 months since that day when I performed my malicious compliance. I have my replacement working at my desk, handling all the tasks that need to be done, and I'm just sitting in a corner reading a book. That's when Ted walks into the security office. His face is red, and he's huffing angrily. He goes to the wall of monitors and pulls up that same camera and then clicks furiously around on the screen while getting angrier and angrier with each passing click. I decide to see what the issue was, and wouldn't you know it, he's fiddling around in the archives section. Uh-oh, that camera isn't saving any footage for more than an hour. I couldn't help but smile. I tried to cover it with my book, but Ted glanced up at the wrong time and started going off.
What are you smiling about?
Nothing, I can see you're busy. Unfortunately, I couldn't help but let out a sneer of pleasure. Ted jumps up and walks directly over to me, then proceeds to try and drill sergeant me.
What are you laughing at?
Now here's the thing, I've never been in the military, but I have had the drill sergeant routine placed on me 1,000,000 times in my life. I'm not scared by it anymore. Plus, I'm sitting down, so the effect isn't working properly. Thus, the laughter now spills out of me. That's the camera I had fixed for you, but you got all whiny about it and told me that Cisco would fix it. Guess you didn't follow up on the ticket.
Oh, so glad you think this is funny, but you don't have to go tell the client that we don't have any of their footage that they're looking for.
Nope, you're right. I don't. I spin around in my chair and then land one more tiny sucker punch. But I mean, if you're too scared to do it, I can. The worst the client can do is request I be fired, and whoops, what do you know? I've already done that for them. Ted huffs at me, draws his fist up ever so slightly, and then finally turns away, storming out of the office. The aftermath. The client never cared about the footage. They just let it drop. My replacement for my position, however, wasn't so easily cowed by Ted as I was. Also, my replacement had an in with someone much higher up in the food chain than I did. Ted only lasted another 6 months at the company before someone finally realized that he wasn't up to par. Oh man, this story is such a good example of never stop learning. Don't think you're above anyone else. Take help if you need it. Otherwise, don't be a Ted. You're just gonna look like Ted. Please don't be a Ted, all right? You think I should quit my job? Sure thing, man. Posted by Gator. This happened earlier this year, around the beginning of February. A friend who I hadn't talked to in a little while asked me if I was interested in applying to a food service job where they had also been working at the time. Boy, was I in for it. I agreed because I needed a little extra cash, and it wouldn't hurt to have some job experience before I started college. This would be my first job ever. According to my friend, their establishment had been understaffed lately, and they really needed the extra help. Not having worked before, I didn't realize that there was probably a reason why they were so understaffed. I contacted the manager, and he told me to come in for an interview. I was psyched, but a tad nervous because I have social anxiety, which has only worsened since the pandemic started. Here comes red flag number 1. The day of the interview, I was asked to adhere to a specific dress code, which I would later realize was the establishment's employee dress code. I then met the manager, and he brought me to the back room to ask me a few questions. I had brought him a physical copy of my resume, which he said he didn't need to look at. After a few very basic questions like my name, what school I go to, he told me I was going straight to work. So is this the start of the training then? Did I get the job? Oh no, we don't actually have official training, so I'm just going to throw you in the kitchen to see how you do. You'll work for a few weeks, and then we can determine if you're a good fit for our establishment and vice versa. Suddenly, this manager, who was supposedly welcoming and excited to have me join their family, began to show his true colors. Not only did he display blatant favoritism toward his more experienced employees, he berated me on multiple instances in front of my other coworkers for not being able to learn how to make our products correctly or quickly enough to his satisfaction and then get them out to the customers. I was new, not stupid. Not to mention, you literally did not train me. It got to the point where I dreaded going to work. One day, specifically, my coworker had asked me to refill the canister of lemonade as he was about to make an order for a customer. There were no other customers waiting for their product, so I helped him finish his task. This was a mistake, as my manager walked in right as I had finished pouring the lemonade. "Gator, the customer always comes first. Why are you filling up the lemonade when you should be making orders? You aren't taking this job seriously. X employee and Y employee are doing this right. Why is this so hard for you?" He left the kitchen, and my coworker who had asked me to fill the lemonade came up to me and apologized, telling me to ignore him. It was becoming obvious that my other coworkers were scared of screwing up in front of him too. This happened on various other occasions that I'll spare you the details of, but here comes the malicious compliance. It was my second to last shift of the week, falling on Saturday, which was often our busiest day. My other friend had just been hired, and we had our first shift together. I was pumped. The manager was in that day, as construction workers were setting up cameras in front of the store and in the kitchen, so he could be able to keep an eye on not only his customers, but his beloved employees. I don't exactly remember the specifics of what led up to this, but in the middle of my shift, he came up to me, with my coworkers watching, and proceeded to yell at me, saying I was too timid with the customers and how this would cost him good reviews. He said that anytime he put me on shift, he was worried he'd have to babysit me while I made the orders or I did my tasks, and if I couldn't handle the job, it's best that I quit. I was ticked. None of it made sense. I always greeted customers when they walked in. I took their orders, and I told them to have a nice day after handing them the product. Did this guy expect me to strike up a conversation with each customer like we were old friends during a rush? I wasn't even allowed to work the register yet. Also, aren't I supposed to be in the back making the order, which you so desperately need me to make anyway? None of my coworkers have filed complaints about my work being sloppy or me not being able to handle my tasks. I was doing everything right. So, I did exactly like he asked me to do. When I got home, I do have quite a problem with defying authority face to face because of my social anxiety. I messaged my manager privately that I would be showing up to my shift tomorrow because I didn't like the idea of abandoning my coworkers on such short notice, but not to put me on the schedule anymore because I would be quitting. He thanked me for being honest with myself. I came in for my last shift and told my coworkers what happened. They offered their condolences, and I actually had fun for the last few hours that I spent at that dreaded job. My manager closed that night and told them that I was leaving because of school. Complete BS. But my coworkers and I knew the real reason. I have not stepped foot into that place since, but may be so inclined in the future just to gloat a little. Here are some of the fun little updates on the current state of their establishment. Before I quit, 3 other people had also left the previous week for various reasons, and after I quit, the numbers escalated. They now have a total of 3 employees, not including the manager and his family members, whom he forces to work to make up for losses. I ran into one of my old coworkers at school, and he told me he was also quitting to work somewhere else that he'd just been hired. It was great to see him again. They have been forced to cut their open hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays, and then 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekends, to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, and entirely closed on weekends. A "now hiring need employees" sign is permanently situated in front of their store. I live in a smallish town, so word gets around quickly about certain crappy managers at certain crappy establishments. It's no surprise that people know to avoid working there. And here are some other red flags that I probably should have paid more attention to before jumping into the job. Employees were not required to get food handlers' licenses until 2 weeks after I'd started working there. I'm pretty sure that's actually illegal. I got one beforehand, of course. The friend who had encouraged me to take the job quit a few days after I was hired. We were constantly out of some ingredients, and my coworkers and even my manager would lie to customers about what was in their order. Allegedly, a competing chain establishment of the same food service variation was set to open up across the road, and so our manager told us that if a customer were to ever order something that sounded like it was off their menu, then to switch tabs to the other establishment's menu and make one of their products instead, and still charge them for it. Our products were way overpriced for something anyone could easily make at home. That pretty much wraps it up. Anyone who's worked a minimum wage job is braver than our troops, and I would personally like to applaud you because you are my hero. Please have a wonderful day today. I am just saying, man, this manager's cutting so many corners and making food for people lying about what's in it. Allergies? What about those? This sounds like a horrible place to work. And OP, you did great by just following your malicious compliance and getting the heck right out of there. Comment the secret phrase below, teddy bear, because Ted was clearly not that. My name's Austin, check out another video here, and I'll see you there.